All right, good morning, everybody. My name is John Crane. If you don't know who I am, I'm the director of the Asphalt Paving Association. I want to thank everybody and welcome everybody to the 43rd Annual Asphalt Paving Conference. Great to have everybody here, and excited to see what great information we can draw from this conference. Before I hand it over to Eric and all the other DOH staffers to go over the pre-con section and Q&A and all the information they're going to do, I've got a few little household things. First off, not right now, but later on today, this room will probably be pretty full as we trickle in. I know there's been an issue with the parking garage. I think we've gotten that one straightened out. So hopefully everybody trickles in here over the next couple minutes. But I want to thank our participants that are joining us online, and thank Daniel Law Firm for sponsoring our broadcast this morning, and always on our lettings, live letting readings. So if you ever want to have any interest in that, join us on asphaltwv.com. You can log into that letting broadcast whenever we have one of those. Last night we had our welcome reception. I want to thank West Virginia Paving for that. It was a great turnout. We had over 80 people show up, which is pretty good for us on that one. So hopefully everybody had a good time and got to know some of your colleagues or other industry members. Good to see all your faces there. If you haven't yet gotten your badge and your registration information and all that stuff, when we go to the break after this session, go ahead and stop by the registration desk with Cheryl and Rena and get that information. And then I also want to thank Appalachian Ag and Testa and Associates. Thank those guys for the breakfast, the coffee, and all the breakfast foods out there. And then finally, throughout the day, this is informative, but it's meant to be interactive. So please ask questions as you go. Oh. 5 minutes. You got unhooked me? No.
You blew it up again.
So.
What the hell did you do?
But yeah, so ask questions, and then we have portable mics we'll be carrying around if you want to ask. The room is kind of big, so if you don't have a booming voice, we have mics we can ask questions into, or you just hopefully you can speak loud enough we can all hear you. Let's see, we put that to the test. Can everybody hear me? No, you're good. You're fine. Don't worry about it. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Eric, and you're gonna go ahead and moderate this pre-con session.
You want to wait until we're done?
We can wait a minute or two.
Yeah, let's give it a minute to get wrapped up.
I think we're adding another microphone, so give us a minute. No, you're good. We'll get kicked off here in a minute.
I think we're good. We can roll with what we have.
Okay.
We'll let Alex get back up.
All right, Eric, turn it over to you, sir.
Blew me all up. So I have to go back to this. Where to go? This.
All right, we're working. Yeah. Thank you, John. Good morning. Welcome, like John said, to the 43rd Annual Paving Pre-Construction Conference. Glad to see everybody here. For this pre-con meeting, this is an opportunity to not only go over items that are typically discussed at pre-construction meetings like we do at individual projects, but here we can interact and we can get together and discuss things in person. When it comes to pre-construction meetings, we normally get just as much from discussing issues after the formal meeting is over. So we're here together today, so let's take advantage of this time to do this. If you have questions that we don't cover, bring them up to our attention. I know that there's always some type of concern that needs to be addressed. It's kind of just in the nature of our work, that's how it goes. But we're here to help, we are open. We want to help remedy these issues that you have. I'm happy to help. I know our management's happy to help as well. So make us aware of your concerns if we don't cover them today. We do have a tight schedule this morning, so I'll go ahead and get us started. I'll touch on our DOH agenda this morning. We'll be discussing purchase order changes and updates. We'll have some bid updates, some DE and civil rights topics, spec updates, and other resurfacing items and materials procedures updates. We're going to wrap up with a question and answer session, which will cover questions that were submitted to the division by industry. We had a lot of questions, so I'm not going to bring up the lights of the round table thing this morning. I'm just going to have everybody cover the questions that were submitted at one time at the end for the sake of time. So, like I said, we have a full agenda. With that being said, we're going to start with our first presenter, Director of Contract Administration, Sean Smith. Thank you.
You don't hear me okay? Good morning, again, Sean Smith, Director, Contract Administration Division. Try to go through this real quick. I know, like Eric said, there's a lot of presenters here today, a lot of question and answers we want to get to. So I'm just going to touch on some things that is kind of some updates and some things that you may need to be aware of or may need to be reminded of in Contract Administration Division. I guess the first thing is back in December, there was a reorganization. It was approved by the secretary back on December 8th. So we have a new org chart approved, slight changes, nothing too major, but there are some personnel changes also that I want people to be aware of. I'll go through this real quick. As you can see, I have 3 assistant director positions. The first being the assistant director of contract pre-qual, contract processing. I think everybody's aware of Sasha and Sasha's group. I'm sure everybody has interactions with our pre-qual section, contract execution, ESD packages, and that type of thing. Also, assistant director for logistics and technology, that's Russell Keys. Used to be Hal Chin. Before that was John Taylor. Mainly the behind the scenes software, Ashtoware, that type of thing. And then assistant director for construction, Matt Crum. Here's where there were some changes and some personnel, I guess, revisions. Larry Shays take over for the consultant procurement side, the CEI side of the statewide inspection services. I also have a new regional construction engineer for District 1.
Should be better.
All right.
I think you're off.
Switch it out.
Oh, let me switch it.
Always technical difficulties. Alan's supposed to have this all taken care of. Yeah. I think we got a document today.
Testing.
Maybe I could use that to aggravate Alex.
I think that Lady's got you covered. Don't worry.
All right, let's try this again. Still can't hear me, can you?
Try moving your mic closer, maybe.
About now?
A little bit.
A little bit.
There we go.
If I can just switch off to something else.
Can we just unplug it and go back to like we were?
Right, use one of these.
It's working. Just we need to turn up a little further.
Yeah, I think it's working now. Just turn it up to back there.
Good now? Okay, that's better. All right. Where was it? Okay, so there was a revision to our regional construction engineers. I'm sure everybody's aware, Tara Goings took an opportunity, employment opportunity elsewhere. Jason Hamilton, he was a construction engineer in District 1, is now the regional engineer over Districts 1, 2, and 3. Kyle Hall retired after 30-some years of service. Mike Withrow is now the regional construction engineer, Districts 5 and 6, no, 4 and 6, I'm sorry. And one other change that we've implemented was Jason Tharp is now the regional engineer for District 7. And Matt Rowan is now the experienced old guy of the bunch. So there's your 4 regionals. We also, something new to this org chart, we added these environmental manager positions. They were added at the request of management, mainly to make sure that our environmental commitments are being kept and our environmental permits are being adhered to. We currently have 3 people on board. They're all stationed up around Porter H at the moment. I think the intent is to expand these statewide. And at some point, more or less have one for each district, similar to the environmental coordinators at the district level. But these folks would only be responsible for construction projects. So that's the current staffing situation in contract administration. We'll move on to something else. So one other thing, spec engineering section is no longer in contract administration division. It's now part of the technical support group, Travis Long's division. So I think everybody's aware of that, but I just wanted to bring it up real quick. So let's go to some miscellaneous information I think people may be interested in. For last year, total contracts per month that contract administration put out, approximately around 220. The orange line at the bottom, that's on the lower side of the last decade, but it may be a little bit misleading because if you look at the total dollar value of our contracts, it's the blue line, this section. It's the third most money spent through contract administration, more or less in the last 12 years or so. And if you want to look at the actual money point, that's it. Third only to last year and the, I guess, $1 billion Boyd year of 2019. So still successful program, I think, that does not include purchase orders, just contract work put through contract administration last calendar year. So quick update on AWP. We went to a cloud-based environment instead of using our locally based servers. We're in the process of implementing the civil rights and the estimation modules of AWP. We're also currently trying out mobile inspector, mobile tester. They're standalone versions of construction materials. We hope to implement those in the near future. This will allow our folks access in remote areas that don't have internet access. And then once they make their comments, make their make their, enter their information. It'll be uploaded once they're back in the service area. In the future, intention is to give industry some access to this program. We looking at having them approve change orders, enter material test results, possibly final estimates, that type of thing. So that's where we're at with AWP. Bid analysis. I think everybody's aware of a new procedure we put in place in 2022. Mainly take a closer look at any item that was bid outside of the 25% variance of the engineer's estimate or the average of all bidders. Something I thought I'd like for some information to share was we were wanting to reduce the occurrence of token bids with this. So we went back and got some information. 2021, this is all items of all bidders, not just the apparent low bidder. And that's the occurrence percentage-wise of token bids that we got. And then we took what we got last year. So there is pretty good reduction in the amount of token bids that we're receiving on projects now, which is something we want. We know we're not going to remove them completely, but we do want to reduce their occurrence. Touching on contract pre-qual, special provision items, they no longer require approval prior to the letting. They only require approval before the work's being performed. We're now requiring the ratings on projects let in 2022 and evaluations for subcontractors. And the intent is still that the running 3-year average is utilized to come up with a performance letter grade. And based off that letter grade, the intent is still that will still determine what your bonding requirements are going to be. Those bonding requirements based off your letter grade is not intended to start until 2024, but that is still subject to change. We were supposed to start this year, but we wanted some additional information, and we may still want some additional information at the end of this year. So we're going to take a look at it. Stay tuned. And of course, if somebody wants to appeal the rating or evaluation that they've been given on a project, there's a process to do that. It's in the contract pre-qual application. There's different levels. I'm not going to read them, but they're right there. Starts with the regional and ends with a committee. There's 2 committees actually. So there is an appeal process, but there's time limits to it. So adhere by them. Some future endeavors. We want to move towards no surety of approval of change orders. I think the industry's probably okay with that. I know the surety companies have said that they don't necessarily need to look at these and approve. That's something we're going to look at. And of course, e-ticketing starting this construction season. So any of the projects this year, asphalt, concrete, aggregate, if you don't have an e-ticket accompanying that material, probably a good chance it may get rejected. We're still going to require paper tickets for this year at least, but any construction project, getting those materials will require an e-ticket. More information is on our website. I would like to mention a lot of our information is on our website, DOH website for under contract administration. So letting information, any forms, contract application, contractor pre-qual applications, information about e-ticketing, contact information, all that stuff is online. So if you need to look up something, it's probably a good bet. It's there. So that's all I have. Any questions? I know we got some question and answers coming up that probably touch on some things that I didn't touch on, but I chose not to include those. All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate you being here this morning. Thank you for the updates. Next, I'd like to welcome Ray Patrick and David Ballard.
You tell me.
Have a heckler in his eyes.
All right, good morning. My name is David Ballard. I am an assistant director in the Civil Rights Division. I'm just going to go over some labor compliance requirements, just the minimum things that you guys need to know for highway construction projects. So these requirements will only apply to federally funded bid projects. So only the ones that's going to have federal funding on it. First thing, what's new for this year? For the bulletin boards, the federal government has changed the posting requirements. They have discontinued 2 of the posters. The EEO is the law, and the EEO is the law supplemental posters. Those, like I said, have been discontinued, and those will need to be removed from all bulletin boards. And they have been replaced with one poster called the Know Your Rights, Workplace Discrimination is Illegal. So 2 posters have been done away with, replaced with one. You know, the bulletin board, federal law does require these bulletin boards to be erected at the job site as soon as any work on the project begins. The boards have to be displayed where they're easily accessible and can be read by not only your staff, but by the public. So we can't have binders inside of trucks. You know, they can't be inside a locked trailer or behind the locked gates where the public cannot get to it. They have to be set up as soon as any work begins. So even before, you know, when your subcontractor putting up the traffic control signs are out there, your board needs to be out and up when that takes place. And those boards have to be out for the entire duration of the project until all work is complete. So once all the paving is done and your work's done, you cannot pack up that board and take it with you if you still have subs left to come in and paint lines on the road or do whatever. So the board has to stay out until everything is totally complete. With those bulletin boards, I know a lot of people purchase those all-in-one postings. We would advise against getting those. Don't waste your money on them because half of what's required are not included on those all-in-one posters. You know, we give out a set of posters at every pre-construction meeting. We give them to the districts. We have them readily available to you. I've brought several today if anybody wants to take some of those. So everything that's current and active for this year, we have. Some people have taken our posters and made their own bulletin board. That's fine. That's perfectly acceptable. Just make sure that you change it this year. You're going to have to take them old EEO posters off, put that new workplace discrimination is illegal poster on. So along with those posters, you're also required to put up the wage rates from the contract, your company's EEO information, and your company's name and address and phone number of your company's EEO officer. All right, for your subcontracts, it is also required that there's 3 documents that have to be physically incorporated into every subcontract agreement. They can't just be referenced. They have to be physically included. And that is the required contract provisions for federal aid construction contracts. It's also known as the FHWA 1273 form. The U.S. Department of Labor wage rates and the DOH special provision for subcontractor prompt payment. So all 3 of those documents must be included in every subcontract agreement. And those documents are available with the proposals. Certified payrolls, they have to be submitted weekly. The Federal Labor Department is really cracking down on those weekly submittals. So we're really on the districts right now about getting those in. Please don't wait till the end of a project to try to submit 5, 10, 20, 50 payrolls. They have to come in weekly. The prime is responsible for the subcontractors. So if there's any problem with subcontractor payrolls, we're going to bring it to the prime's attention to get corrected. Please make sure that you do not list employee addresses or full social security numbers. That is not permitted by law. Only the employee's name and their company ID number needs to be on those payrolls. Their work classification, it has to match what's in the wage rates. You know, operator, laborer. There's no such title in the wage rates as flagger. So if we see payrolls on there with the title of flagger, they're going to be rejected. If they're an apprentice or if they're a trainee, make sure it's listed on there if they're an apprentice or a trainee. Wage rates, make sure they're being paid the appropriate prevailing wage rates. Of course, that's the standard certified payroll form. The statement of compliance, this is the biggie. You know, statement of compliance form has to be attached with each and every certified payroll. This is what makes it certified. So that form right there, that's the form that your company officer signs. You're validating that you're paying fringe benefits. You're certifying everything on that payroll is correct. So this form right here, not getting submitted, this is what causes us major problems with auditors. This form is what they're looking for. The fringe benefit form, we have to have this with payroll number 1. So anytime this form has to be submitted with your first certified payroll. And we need you to submit one for each craft if they're different. If you got different funds for laborers, operators, whatever, those need to be submitted. Prompt payment. Federal Highways is really on us right now about prompt payment. So we're looking for these before projects are closed out. Primes must pay the subcontractors within 14 calendar days after receipt of payment from DOH. So again, this only applies to federally funded contracts, even ones with there's no DBE goals. So all subcontractors. And the prompt payment clock starts when you guys receive payment from DOH. So that's when the 14-day starts. Okay, the Jobs Act, we get a lot of questions about the Jobs Act. The Jobs Act is only a hiring preference. It has nothing to do with wages. It has nothing to do with payrolls or any of that stuff. The Jobs Act applies only to state-funded projects that are $500,000 or more. So all the labor compliance requirements I just went over, none of that applies to Jobs Act projects. The only difference with Jobs Act projects is those payrolls also have to be submitted to the State Division of Labor. So when you send them into DOH, you also have to send them into the Division of Labor. And those payrolls have to include the county and state that the employee lives in. That's what the Division of Labor is looking at for the hiring preference. They're looking at what county those people come from, because they require that 75% of your workforce come from the local labor market. And they define local labor market as all 55 West Virginia counties and any out-of-state county that is within 50 miles of our state line. So it's a pretty broad area. Title VI, since we accept money from the federal government, we have to comply with all Title VI requirements. Title VI just basically states that no person in the United States on the basis of race, color, or national origin shall be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So basically, it just says you can't discriminate in what we do. And as a recipient of our federal funding, we also have to ensure that you guys are in compliance with Title VI, so that you follow Title VI. The main way that we do this is where I said that FHWA 1273 form has to be physically incorporated with every subcontract agreement. That right there will keep you in compliance with our Title VI requirements. And that's all as far as labor compliance goes. Thank you very much. Now, Ray Patrick.
Guess that's right. Everyone hear me? Okay, I'm gonna try to do this from here. I usually stand down on the floor and look in. So, did I already mess something up? Something. Oh, no, where we're at. That's not me.
Oh, sorry.
So it wasn't me.
No. Which PowerPoint is yours?
It's the ADA, the one, same exact one that
Oh, okay.
David, that's one.
There you
Just
go.
continuing.
Gotcha.
from this point.
1 second. All right, all yours.
All right, my name is Ray Patrick. I'm the ADA coordinator with the Civil Rights Compliance Division, also assistant director with the Department of Transportation. I'm here to talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And basically, I really appreciate being here. I've been trying to get on the paving program for a few years. And so this gives me 10 minutes to explain to you how paving affects ADA compliance. ADA its accessibility is required by law and has been since the passage of the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act. In July of 2013, the DOJ and Department of Transportation put out a joint technical advisory that clarified alterations and maintenance. With alterations, or alteration and maintenance, with alterations, anytime you conduct an alteration project or a program that affects current ADA compliance, then you have to assess, and we're talking about curb ramps, you have to assess if the curb ramps along your project are currently compliant. If not, they need to be upgraded in conjunction with that program. And so what the feds did in 2013 when they put out this joint technical advisory, they clarified the differences between maintenance and alteration. And basically alteration for me and what I deal with is mill fill, mill overlay, or a new layer of pavement on the roadway. So per FHWA and the DOJ, under the requirements of the ADA, all curb ramp upgrade and installation work is required prior to or in conjunction with an alteration or repaving project. This presented a stress to our DOH paving program when we started our program in 2013. And from 2013 to approximately 2017, the primary method of upgrading our curb ramps was with our paving program. And our paving budget really took a hit with that, because if you have 30 curb ramps along the stretch of your paving section, those curb ramps had to be incorporated into that paving project. And so I think what happened a lot of times is we started paving everywhere there wasn't a sidewalk and it wasn't curb ramps. That catches up with you. And so we developed, DOH, ADA Policy Board within DOH, developed a process to try to get ahead of the paving or the ADA requirements with paving. And so we decided to use or utilize the design build method of implementation to take the stress off our paving budget and have a standalone curb ramp program. And so in 2018 and 19, 43 projects were led, but 41 were awarded, 37 counties were served. We installed and upgraded to the tune of 4,500 curb ramps in that 2-year period. Then COVID hit, so you're not going to see anything in 2020. But in 2021, due to the success of the prior program, the budget for the ADA upgrades was entered into the STIP, or the money was dedicated in the STIP. And we now have, in 2021, 18 projects went out, 16 counties were served, and roughly 1,500 curb ramps were upgraded. This year, or in 2022, again, 18 projects were led, and roughly 1,800 curb ramps were upgraded in that period of time. This year, round 4, so to speak, we already have 12 projects in the pipeline or have actually been advertised. That's 12 counties, 971 curb ramps identified. There's going to be more as the projects continue to come out this year. With those curb ramps, with our curb ramps, we've developed a data set that is available on you can go through our DOT site, go through the Americans with Disabilities Act link, and you can keep drilling down, you'll find this data map. In the map, we've identified roughly 21,000 curb ramp locations along our infrastructure. Those curb ramps are required to be compliant prior to, again, or in conjunction with any paving program. So as you're looking up here on the screen, I don't know if I have I don't know if I do. Anyway, you'll see the blue circles. That's a compliant curb ramp. You'll also see there is a this little white square box closest to me. That is a conditionally compliant curb ramp. And how we've defined that is the curb ramp, the construction of the ramp itself, the concrete, the DWS, technical warning surface placement, that's all good. But it's not totally compliant because possibly the threshold that goes from the ramp out into across the gutter pan out to the road is not flush. It's required to be flush. People ask me, well, what's flush? Well, flush is flush. And then the clear space is also an area that is required to be compliant. And that is the full width of the ramp extended 4 feet out into the abutting roadway. So when we find that the curb ramp itself, the concrete, is compliant, and it can be, what's not compliant can be fixed with paving, we deem it conditionally compliant, okay, in our data set. And then one that requires reconstruction, you'll see that in the far right, is a black square. We've already assessed that, and it requires to be upgraded either in conjunction with your paving program or before. We're also out there collecting, you see some other icons, we're collecting crosswalks and push button locations as well. So anyway, we have a bunch of blue curb ramps indicated out there in our data, or in our data set along our infrastructure, and we want to ensure that those remain blue once we pave that section of road where we've already upgraded the ramp. So compliant attributes of every curb ramp are listed here. The ones that are primarily affected by paving are the ones in red. A curb ramp requires a turning space. It requires a less than 833 or 1 in 12 maximum running slope. The cross slope can't exceed 2%. Ramp width is 5 feet minimum for DOH projects, and the detectable warning surface properly placed. Surfaces are to remain firm, stable, slip resistant, and generally planar. That's what's required. Again, the two key attributes that are effective with paving are that flush threshold for smooth rollability and the clear space. And give you a bunch of examples. These are ramps that we have put in through our design build methodology. As you'll notice there, some ramps are fairly complicated, not straightforward. But you'll see out there on the abutting roadway, we've addressed the clear space area. We've ensured that the threshold of that ramp exiting and entering the street is flush and rollable. And again, flush is flush. There's not a 1/4 inch vertical discontinuity or vertical discontinuity. I can't even get the word out. Lift, vertical lift, we'll say, that's permitted. Nothing. Flush is flush. You stand across that threshold, you should be able to tell any difference between your curb ramp and the road. And it's extended a full 4 feet out into the roadway is what should be addressed in that clear space area. Here's just another example. Here we're going through a gutter pan. The pavement, like on the previous one, the pavement's all the way up to the curb edge. Here we do have a gutter pan, gutter channel, so we have to be flush with that gutter channel. And that gutter channel needs to be flush with the road because flush is flush. Okay, it's just other examples. All that's flush and rollable the day that we close that design build project out. And again, we want it to remain that way. Here's just another curb ramp in Shepherd. And I tried to indicate the town that we were in. We've been in about every town in West Virginia, but we still got a few that we need to get to. But you'll notice there's really no typical design with these curb ramps. Our topography really presents difficulties with putting in compliant curb ramps. And so again, I'll just harp on you, is once we get it in there and it's compliant to the greatest extent feasible, we want to keep it that way. According to the contractors, I've asked them how long they expect that work to last. They tell me 25, 30 years. Well, that's what we want out of it. Okay, we have a lot of tight corners, but again, flush is flush. I want to maintain, I think I'm going to get into this here in a second, but I want to maintain positive drainage. I love inspecting on rainy days. Sometimes we can't even put in a curb ramp because of the nature of the environment. Here was 3-step lifts from the sidewalk to the road, so we had to put in a ramp versus a curb ramp. And as you're going through these, you're noticing where we've addressed that clear space area to ensure that these ramps that are newly constructed meet compliance standards. Gave you a bunch of pictures. I wanted to show you where you've been. Again, that clear space, flush, and roll. All right, so our goal with all the work that we've done and continue to do, and you've done and continue to do, we want to maintain current ADA compliance with our alteration or paving projects. So we put in the curb ramps, now we're ready to pave the road. That's the goal. Before, it was holding up our paving program because we didn't have the curb ramps upgraded. So on our PVT 7, there's a specific note. Our PVT 7 is our revised standard detail for sidewalks. And there's a specific note that says normal gutter flow line and profile shall be maintained through the ramp area. Positive drainage must be maintained so that no ponding occurs within the ramp or clear space area. This is right down across from the Capitol. And can't remember what road that is, but it's the one going up to the interstate. And this was newly paved back when. And when it was paved, the contractor paved over that gutter pan. And when they paved over the gutter pan, they did what we want them to do. They made sure that we had a flush threshold at the curb ramp. But in doing so, paving over the gutter pan, now we have a 2-inch change in elevation there, and now the gutter pan's dammed and clogged, and that water can't get to that inlet. And there's probably about 4 inches of water on that ramp, so it makes it unusable to the pedestrian that needs it. Now, what I found interesting, take that crosswalk to the right, and oops, it's not advancing. Let's go one more for me. Okay, there you go. That's that same crosswalk. On the other side, they left the gutter pan open. All right, so this is the same exact day. So it's drained very well, but the problem is the asphalt is 2 inches above the gutter pan. And so now I don't have a flush threshold anymore. I got the proper drainage, but not a flush threshold. All right, this is just another example. It's down on Pennsylvania there in Charleston. I happened to be out there inspecting again after a rainy day. I like rainy days. And I found this gentleman using a cane crossing the street. He couldn't use the ramp that we had recently installed because it was holding water. And when I went over there to look at it, I was wondering, why is it holding water? You can look over there on the right-hand side. The new pavement came through. We don't have a flush threshold anymore, but it also went over the gutter pan, and we now have a situation where it's damming up the water, so we don't have positive drainage. Okay, and this is just another example. The ramp looks fine from this point of view. Everything looks fine and rollable. Gutter channel's clear, so I don't have any ponding. But as I got a little lower and closer, there's about 1.5 to 2 inches of asphalt built up right in front of the ramp that renders it unusable to anyone using a scooter, walking with crutches, dragging a foot, or anybody, period, could catch that with a toe and trip. This is a bug's eye view of that. So the pavement came through and rendered the compliant ramp non-compliant. And then here's another example, that same intersection. You see the pavement joint there, where we're still flush at the curb ramp. As you go across that first crosswalk bar, you can see there's a lip of asphalt there that again renders that non-planar or non-flush. So it's important because if we don't have a flush threshold, and we don't have positive drainage, that citizen cannot utilize that attribute or program of our system and does not have access to the crosswalks or the sidewalks at front businesses, government buildings, schools, churches, wherever they want to go. And that's all I have. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you, gentlemen. There's a lot of important information with what these guys had to say. I really appreciate them being here. And I will add this, whenever I was in the district, I had Ray come out to one of my projects I had questions on. He was very helpful. So Ray, I don't want to volunteer your services for you, but he's a very helpful guy. Just make a mental note of that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I'm trying to save time getting off the stage here. I have cards.
Okay, Ray has cards. If anybody wants to find him
I'll
here.
live with you.
Okay, we'll have them up front. Put them right up here on the table. All right, thank you again, guys. Okay, next, we have Ron Stanovich, Director of Materials Control, Soils and Testing. Ron, you've always fun to listen to, so welcome, Ron.
Great.
Job. All right, thanks, everybody. I'll try to get this adjusted here.
Put it on your tie.
That'll work. Finally, somebody had found a good use for a tie. All right, everybody hear me? If you can, I'm sorry. So, anyway, I don't have a presentation here. I was trying to put one together for these materials procedure updates. Putting a bunch of words on a slide. You're going to see enough of that today. I didn't need to add to it. So I'm just going to kind of go through real briefly a bunch of the materials procedures that we've changed over the past year and some of the ones we are working on currently and should have finished here in a few months, or what we plan to do the remaining year here. And I'm just going to kind of focus on the ones that apply to asphalt, the work that you guys do out there. So I'll just kind of go down the line, and if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll try to address it. I'm going to be brief. A lot of this information is on our website. The meetings are open, so you can attend these meetings. Our schedule's on the website as well. So let's get started. And there's a few of them, so this is going to sound repetitive. MP 106-03.51. Our construction certification schools, there's been a lot of questions about reciprocity from other states, or if you've got various certifications like ACI and stuff like that. How to deal with that wasn't really clear in how we did things. Sometimes we just did it at the whim of our QA schools coordinator. So what that MP does is just basically kind of spells out how we intend to handle those situations when they arise. Another big thing that you all are going to be hearing about this year is, if you haven't already, Buy America requirements. How many realize those things are changing? This is the audience participation part. Raise your hand. There you go. Good, good. MP 106-1050, it just updates how we are dealing with that on the material side of things, spelling out how we plan to handle waivers and stuff like that with various materials. There is a certificate of compliance, and we've got a huge list of materials associated with that MP, of what materials require that certificate of compliance and which ones do not. We threw that together really fast. I don't know how accurate that is or how often that will have to change, but we do have a pretty thorough list out there for you guys to help give you some information on how we'll handle those materials. We had a couple MPs in section 109 that basically update our price adjustments for acceptance testing, maybe wasn't a test performed, or we missed a test. We've updated, those two MPs kind of spell out how we're doing that, the big changes, it goes from $300 to $700, depending on the test, and then we've also thrown in language on there's several more QC MPs that I'm going to touch on. One big change in all of them is if you don't do a test, it spells out to know that non-pavement of material should be considered. As a matter of fact, with the way it's tied into the spec, that should be the way it's interpreted. All right, so, I mean, we require those tests to be done. It's in your best interest to do them. That's where you gotta argue with Sean's guys. So, moving on, this is the Asphalt Conference, so I've got several here that have to do with section 401. A bunch of these are just, if you were to go on our website and look at our MPs, there's gonna be some on there dated 1995. It's kind of ridiculous, really. So what I've asked our materials control section to do is similar to the way AASHTO reconfirms all their testing procedures every 4 years, to implement a process like that, to where at least we are going through checking these, making sure that they reference proper AASHTO, ASTM standards. And plus, we're just changing that date to help you guys know that we are looking at these periodically and updating them. So a lot of these 401 ones that we did are just like cleaning up how to calibrate thermometers. And it's just really just maybe going through and cleaning up any typos that might be in them or whatnot. So there was 3 of those that we did. 401, 02, 21, 22, and 24. And now these here deal with aggregate sampling procedures, MP 700, 00.06, and it just kind of tightens up the contractor's sampling requirements. Again, small changes, but they could, if you don't pay attention to them, could affect how things work. I touched on the quality control and acceptance MPs. There's 3 of them that we did, and like I said, it talks about how if you don't test for certain, if you don't do certain tests, we probably shouldn't be paying for the material. There. We had an issue, we talked in the asphalt meeting there yesterday. There was a lot of question about bond strength and coring. We had an issue a while back, I think this past summer, where it looked like some of our cores, they weren't being extracted correctly. It was causing some issues. It's been pointed out that MP 40107.21 does require the use of a core extraction tool. So please pay attention to that. They look like fancy post hole digger. One thing we've thought about doing is possibly buying a couple of these for the districts to have and kind of help educate how to use them, when to use them. How many people out there think that would be a good idea? We got one. All right, well, then we'll just change the spec and have the contractors provide it. Make sure they use it. See, there's more ways than one to skin a cat here. MP 4010350, you heard Sean talk about e-ticketing. We just made updates to that to spell out how we want that handled on our end. I think it gives examples of what we want to see, how we want to see it, or how it will be demonstrated to us. John would really appreciate if I talked about these concrete updates. A lot of our paving jobs, we do upgrade the guardrail. Just a reminder that we updated the specs and the MPs to require guardrail manufacturers to participate in NASHTO's National Transportation Product Evaluation Program, NETPEP, and their audits. So if we don't see that they are participating in that, we're not using them as a manufacturer. Pretty much most of ours do, so it shouldn't really be a problem. Currently working through, that we're working on, we've noticed some issues with our independent assurance program and how we are keeping track of various personnel in the districts that do this work for us. So we are updating our MP for that. And there was another one I alluded to that was like 1995. You know, some of the stuff that's detailed in there, materials is still under contract administration. So we're just cleaning up that kind of stuff, but we are doing some other things with that because that's pretty much our core function. So you will see some interesting changes to that, I think, hopefully for the better. And also MP 10621, it's how we're approving safety products, MASH compliant products. And basically, probably doesn't affect a lot of you all too much. It just details how those products work through the DOH system and get put on an approved list. I had a question about some AWP updates. Sean touched on this. If you remember, he mentioned that, you know, we are wanting to open it up for contractors to enter their own materials testing results. There is a trial project, I'm told, this summer. It's Green Bottom, the Mason County line, where the contractor will be allowed to do that, where they're testing people. So all of our asphalt labs will have their lab inspections done by the end of March. And just kind of a reminder for the districts, all 10 districts have or will be receiving all your Marshall mixture ASHTO PSP samples, and you should have been notified of this. So that's really all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate you being here this morning. Next, I'd like to welcome one of our newer DOH members, Janie Adkins. Janie is with our Technical Support Division. She's working with our spec engineer, Steve Boggs. Janie, we're glad to have you as part of our team and like to welcome you. Thank you. Good.
Can I go back to the beginning?
Oh, right here. See that clicker?
Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Janie Adkins. I'll go down there. And today I'll be doing the West Virginia DOH specification update. First and foremost, I just want to thank everyone for putting this conference together and for having us here today. Thank you for your time. So I don't really look like Steve Boggs, but he's out there in the crowd somewhere. I think he's coming up later for some Q&A, but I'm newer to the group, as Eric mentioned, and he thought it'd be a good experience for me to talk to you guys today, so thank you. And so with that, another book bites the dust. So a little bit about our publications unit. We're located at the Technical Support Division on Smith Street. And so it's a relatively new group. It's a relatively new group founded in about 2021. And so our publications group is separated into 3 subunits. We have our specifications, standards, and manuals. And to go a little background into it, our specifications group, we provide sort of like a cookbook on how a construction project is going to be made, the materials needed, and the pay items and pay information. And then our standards, we deal with design directives, structural directives, and standard details. And a little bit exciting, but we have our manuals unit that's relatively new, and we're going to be housing all the manuals for the state here, such as the construction manual. So we'll go back to the standards and manuals here towards the end of the presentation, but let's dive into our specifications. So to be able to create that cookbook, we need to meet with everyone. And we do this usually on the even numbers of the months, usually every other month on Wednesday from about 9 to noon. We have dual options of in-person and Google Meet. So, and if you're coming in person, we're in the basement, technical support, and we would love to have you. And for those coming, thank you. So something nifty about our group is that we're part of the Open Government Meeting Act. So that means we post our agenda to the Secretary of State office, and then after the meeting, we post our minutes online. And for those on our emailing list, we get this out to you guys ahead of time of the agenda. But here, anyone's welcome. And so again, we'd love to have you. And with that, it would be a hoot to have you at our meetings. Incredible picture taken by Steve Boggs, so let me use it, so thank you. So where can you find our information? Another exciting thing here is that our technical support division has a new web page, and so we're located within that. And here's a snippet of what that's going to look like when you come to our page. So you can find our book here, manuals, standard details. So here's a link to get to our page, but we're moving some things over from contract administration and engineering division. So if you're experiencing some technical difficulties with that, we appreciate your patience as we move everything over. So thank you. So why is this presentation called Another Book Bites the Dust? Well, we're saying farewell to that 2017 specification book, and we're saying hello to, insert drum roll, slow drum roll, our new 2023 specification book. And so it's done, it's out there, it's on that website. So I want to thank everyone for helping get that put together and being involved in that. So thank you. So we're putting that 2017 book and we're adding it to the shelf of time. So to address that, we have a lot of questions about, are we printing the book? When is the book going to be out? We want our book, and we want to give you that book. That is so important to us. We did a survey a year or so ago, and we understand the importance of getting that book out to you, especially for those in the field. So something recently, we've had a lot of issues with the printing costs. They're up by four times. So we requested more money into the authorization, and a recent update this week, actually, that was approved. So we're getting the ball rolling to this, and we're going to give that book to you. Moving on, this year we had 45 specification changes and 8 special provisions. So I think this is, working with the spec book has been pretty snazzy to see that this is something that's just continuous. And so, I mean, you can see back in 2019, we have data there. But again, here's our meeting participation. So again, thank you again for those attending our meetings. So now we're going to dive into the meat and potatoes of this presentation. So we're going to start here with 100s and work up to the 700s. But we're going to take some of those 45 specification changes out and kind of let you know what's maybe going to impact the asphalt industry some more. So starting off with 106.1, source of supply and quality requirements. Here we're going to be updating the Buy America requirements to correlate with new federal law. And this is going to be part of the Infrastructure Investment Act. And we've had iron and steel Buy America requirements since 1983. But a couple new things, such as the manufacturing process has been added, and this has to be manufactured in America, and that means from the melting point to the application of coatings. And there's a waiver out there for that, but also the construction materials. This means all the construction materials have to be made in America. And, again, we worked with the materials division to, give that NP into our specification. That gives a list of applicable and non-applicable materials. But I think it's very important to note that this Buy America excludes cementous materials, aggregates, and asphalt. And there's a link down, there's a link down there, Federal Highway put out that's got some good Q&A questions and some also insightful information if you're curious. So next, section 108.7.1, failure to complete on time and liquidated damages. So the last time this table was updated was in 2020. And here with the new spec book coming back out, we thought this would be a good idea to update this table to account for inflation. Subsection 109.20.1, electronic ticket delivery. This was mentioned earlier. This is also called e-ticketing. So we're starting to mandate e-ticketing for asphalt, aggregate, and concrete. But right now, we also require the paper copy until we get any issues or anything like that worked out, also for more rural parts of the state. So diving into the 400s asphalt pavements, starting off with section 401, asphalt base wearing, patching, and leveling courses. Here, this is going to be a complete section rewrite, and we're going to be updating some typos and terminology, but also acceptance testing to responsibility, removal of thin lift corrections, and removal of the bonus structure. Section 403, crack sealing asphalt pavement. This is a really, this is a new section to our specifications book, and I wasn't here at last year's conference, but I was given some background that this was suggested from last year's conference, and so now it's in our book, so please go check it out. So 410, asphalt base and wearing courses, percent within limits, PWL. This is going to be an entire section update, adds 2-lane national highway system criteria, and removal of the bonus structure. And then now we're diving into the 600s. Here in the past, this is going to be 636, maintaining traffic. In the past, the entire signal system was used and was counted as one, while the number of months was counted as the quantity. And now the revision here is that each portable signal location is counted, and the number of units that are used would be the quantity. So for an example, I think this is better explained through an example. So if a project required 3 portable signals for 6 months, the quantity would be 18 months. So also with this, so if each portable signal maybe had one or more heads on it, that wouldn't count towards the quantity. So next is 642, temporary pollution control. Here we're adding the unit value method to the section. So you would take the estimated unit value during construction, you would subtract that from what you actually use. And then we added a link here in our specifications that give a list of items and their unit value. And the plan should still show quantity tables and pollution control devices, and payment will be based on the linked table and pollution control devices that the contractor installs. And then going into the 700s materials details. So like similar to 720 smoothness testing, so similar to 401 and 410, this is going to be removing the bonus structure. So now going into our special provisions. We had 8 approved this year, as mentioned earlier. One important to note is the disadvantaged business enterprises special provision. Here we are updating some of our definitions and adding some requirements to plan and submittal for DBE approval. And now, as mentioned earlier, we're going to start getting into our standards and manuals portion and some of the items that are going on in there. So very exciting, approved this year was Design Directive 644 asphalt pavement. And with that, that's going to be updating PWL selection requirements. And this is going to help eliminate smaller PWL projects and eliminate some of the PWL projects going through towns, but will have utilities and manholes and such. And then our structure directives. So what we're doing here is taking our bridge design manual and moving it over into our structure directives with some general information. And then we had a sign fabrication detail revised. So right now your highway taxes at work have a white background with black lettering. We're going to green background with white lettering. So that's the update there. And so speaking of green and white, it is also very exciting to let everybody know about our 2022 construction manual. And I think our green and white construction manual will complement our blue and gold specifications book very well. And so here, what we're doing is we have, and this hasn't been updated since 2002. So the biggest thing about this is updating a lot of the terminology. So a lot of the handwritten reports are now electronic reporting. And we've also added several sections to align with spec book and removed. So then we have our alternate project delivery manual and the project delivery method in which design and construction services are included in the same contract. So thank you again for having us up here today and for letting you present. We really appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, please contact us. I've got Steve's contact up there and there's mine at the bottom. So thank you so much.
Jamie, thank you, appreciate it. I didn't know that specifications could be so energetic. You did this, good job. Our last DOH speaker this morning, he's also going to be our first person. We're going to go straight into Q&A after he's finished with what he has to say in his updates. That's going to be Director of Operations, Jacob Bumgarner. We're going to go straight into Q&A and then we'll pass it off. I decided to do it like this because industry gave us a lot of questions. We answered them all. One of them Jamie went over. We don't have the printed spec books yet, so we'll do this and hopefully this will expedite the time and keep us on schedule. So Jacob, thank you.
So good morning. I fell into the same category as Ron as an underachiever with no PowerPoint, but we'll go over a few or the changes that you would see in our new PO contracts for asphalt laydown and some for pickup. So the first change is in section 5.2, the contract was updated to allow the factors used in the fuel adjustment formula to be broken down by fuel use for each portion of work within the factor, with the intention of offering a more fair price adjustment throughout the entirety of the contract. Originally, the fuel adjustment using the factor of 1.6 as provided in the standard specs 109.9 was applied only to materials. Dividing the overall factor of 1.06 into its individual components allows it to be changed to a more charged to more contract items, including laydown and hauling. And so we did our research and we found that in coming up with the 1.06 factor for the overall in your contract bid items, it equates to 0.3 for production, 0.49 for hauling, and 0.14 for the laydown. So that's the change. We also updated the asphalt pickup contract, but it only includes the production of materials factor. In section 7.1, the bidding vendor must now be responsible for bidding the materials and laydown portions of the contract. DOH will not award a contract for materials only or laydown only. The contract now states bidding vendor must provide both materials and laydown services within the same bid. Bids received for materials only or bids received for laydown services only will be disqualified. West Virginia DOH will not coordinate materials and laydown services with separate vendors. The third change that I'm going to highlight today, the language in section 10.1 of the contract is clarified to make it clear that a vendor cannot turn down the work as the first low bid vendor with the intention of the same vendor accepting the work as the next low bid vendor from another plant. And so the wording in the contract to do that is, in the event of refusal, the West Virginia DOH at its own discretion shall cancel the delivery order and may seek to obtain the requested goods or services from another low bid vendor or proceed with an emergency purchase from the open market. A vendor refusing a delivery order forfeits their interest in the delivery order. For example, a vendor cannot decline work offered as lowest bid at Plant A with the expectation that the same work will be reoffered to them at Plant B at a higher price, even if Plant B is the next low bid. While this is at the discretion of the vendor, to choose which plant to pull material from, the lowest bid must be honored. Next change was in section 3.34, and we added some wording and new items around easel loads. This language was added at the request of one of our districts after finding there was no way to adequately compensate the vendor for additional materials used to meet design mix of a specific easel load rating. So now we have easel surcharge, contract items 24 and 25, is a surcharge to compensate vendor for supplying the other necessary aggregates or mix types when the asphalt design mix requires an easel rating of 3 million or greater. Mixes requiring less than 3 million easels do not qualify for this surcharge. And that was also added to the asphalt pickup contract. The fifth change, in section 3.3, 13.2, mobilization for profiling milling was updated to allow vendors to charge mobilization for fine milling operation, which had not been allowed in the past. And the final item that we changed in the new laydown contracts was in section 3.3.13.1. Pavement profiling milling was updated to specify who retains fine millings. And it says, it shall be the West Virginia DOH district engineer or their designee's decision who retains ownership of the profiled mill cuttings, West Virginia DOH or the vendor. West Virginia DOH will designate on the delivery order contract items 49 through 54 pavement profiling milling. West Virginia DOH owns millings or contract items 55 through 60 pavement profiling millings. Vendor owns millings as per section 9.2. Vendor shall factor in the haul cost of profile milling cuttings up to 10 miles one way in the bid price of these contract items 49 through 60, regardless who is retaining ownership of the millings. So in the asphalt pickup contract, in addition to the fuel adjustment factors and the ESOL load surcharge mentioned before, we added to section 7 of the contract to clarify that West Virginia DOH district engineer or their designee shall factor in the proximity of plant to project site and related haul fuel expenses when determining low bid vendor. And that is the changes to those contracts. And so now I think we're going to the question and answer portion.
Yes, and we're gonna put them up on the screen too, so if you're ready, we are.
I guess I'm ready. So I'm going to, these questions were submitted through John Crane to Eric, and I think we've kind of broken them out by each group that needs to answer them. So I'm going to take the operations questions. Feel free that if you have additional questions or want to try to make me clarify more, raise your hand and we'll do the best we can. All right. Or just because I think we'll want to try to get you the mic is the reason for that. So, all right. Whenever Alex.
You have a clicker up there.
Of course I do. Okay. Let's see. There we go. All right, so I think you all can read it. I'll give how do you want to do this? You want me to read the question and give the answer?
Just brief over it.
Okay, so this question is about frequent delays on payments to contractors and increased size and scope of our larger purchase order paving projects. And they ask if we could do weekly progress invoices over certain amounts. And our answer is no. The purchase order process that we have, we believe makes it so that we cannot pay anything until we receive all of the work on that purchase order. We just make sure, I guess the one thing that we did want to make sure is that we have problems at times with invoices getting held up in the Attorney General's office, and it's because something doesn't exactly match on the invoice, like your name, your address, and it can be as simple and what we would consider as silly as when you registered with Oasis in your address for Avenue, you put a period, and then on the invoice you left that period off. They stop that and make us get that fixed. So just be really cognizant on that point that you need to match exactly what's in Oasis. And as always, we would encourage you, if there's problems with payments, talk to our folks at the district, the district manager being one of those folks. So if you're having problems, talk to them. All right. I think this is, is there, about this one's, the first one, B, is about removal of RPMs. And yes, we have that in our asphalt preservation and pavement markings, material, equipment and labor by vendor contract. So we do have a way to do that. It is not in the same contract as the purchase order, but we can make it happen if that's what we need to do. C is the due to fluctuation in cost, can we consider hauling increases or price adjustments? And as I read before, we tried to do that to the best of our ability in the new purchase order contracts. So this one is about releasing of PO projects late in season, and goes into a lot of detail about that. But basically, is there a way to inform industry of potential future plans? And the short answer is not really. No. We are sometimes at the mercy of of other folks on how much funding we can get. The legislature has been very kind to us and to the industry and I think to the citizens for pumping some of that extra surplus back into the roads, and we've done that. But that happens by a one-time vote, and we don't know if they're going to do that again. We don't know if there's going to be the opportunity to do that again. So we can't rely on that. And so we will try to get you the purchase orders as fast as we are comfortable getting them to you, that there will be funding available to pay for it. All right. Let's see. Can we clarify the items 24 and 25? And this is around the ESOL surcharge. And this is intended to help compensate the vendor for those mixed designs, as I said. And in those, we know that there is the presence and the need for dolomite and heavy binders. So, let's see. And then some confusion on why both items exist. The specified PG binder surcharge will be paid in conjunction with the asphalt material. So that should answer it. Okay. Let's see, can we award purchase order jobs with a low bidder be posted publicly? I guess we're kind of giving a short answer of no, not really, no. It would be tough to do that. If you feel like we're treating you unfairly, I guess, you're always able to FOIA that information, but we're trying our best, and like my division doesn't see every one of them that goes out. It's happening at 10 different locations across the state. Okay, there are some districts that are not paying for cleaning and sweeping items on purchase order, even though the specifications require the contracts to conduct the work. When you get your delivery order, make sure that that's in there. If it's not, then you need to communicate with the district and ask, okay, we've got to do this. It's per the specs. How is this going to get completed? And if you feel like that they're not giving you the ability to do that, to be compensated for doing that, so that you can properly put down the asphalt, then you have you can always say no to the purchase order. You can always say, I can't perform this because it's not up to spec. And of course, internally, we see this, we're talking to our folks, so hopefully this isn't an issue. All right. How am I doing on time? All right. Why does the DOH award jobs before they're ready to be paid. Well, what I'll tell you is that goes back to the question before on why can't you give us all the information about the projects that you're doing? When we know that we can do the job, we are trying to get you that information, and we are doing it by giving you a PO. Please work with us on making sure that you know your schedule and our schedule can be as one, and we can get the job done. But we're trying to get you that information as soon as possible. I would hope that we don't have to have, we're not still waiting on work to be done, but if there is, then that's what we're asking for your help. Good. Is it possible to get DOH to advance their repairs for culvert crossings? Our answer is this decision is made at the district level, and the question goes into using concrete. I think we're using concrete more than I remember doing when I was in a district like 10 years ago or so. But we can't all, you guys know that concrete has been hard to get a hold of here in the last year, and so we can't always get concrete. We have to go out there and make those repairs when we can, and so just communicate once again with the districts as needed. You know, don't just rely on your contact in the resurfacing coordinator's office or the comptroller's office. There are folks above them, and we encourage you to go through the chain of command in the district as much as possible. But if you're not getting the answer, I don't want to say that. I don't want you really answer shopping, but if you're not getting if we're not taking you as serious and getting you a good answer, then please, you know, that's the time to take it up through the ranks. Okay. Is it possible to get more scratch and P&L added to jobs? Typically, that is a decision by the design engineer in the design phase of the project. Like we've said in quite a few of these, discuss that with the district as needed. Work with the inspector on site. And we understand that there may be needs, maybe changes in those quantities. That's why we use this method a lot, and it allows us to make those small adjustments when need be. Okay, okay, yeah. So how much PO work is out there for this spring? So for the paving season itself, right now, in state-funded PO paving, we have about 20 million for the year is all we have. But that amount can depend on the money that is needed to be spent by SRIC. I mean, so far this winter season, we've been pretty lucky. I think I'm gonna have to, as a DOH, we're probably gonna have to buy a bunch of salt and not throw it on roads, which is okay, I guess. But it's been fairly warm, so you know the districts will have some extra money in their annual plan budgets, and that 20 million may increase as they have it available. Okay. How did the wrap stuff? Okay, yeah, this is okay. So what percentage of recycled material is the districts, have the districts been capturing from projects? What are the districts utilizing it for? So we are only, as far as I know, we are only capturing some of the RAP from state-funded purchase orders. When we do, we have been directed, and we are using it for shoulder stabilization and even putting it on some of our stabilized, gravel roads, in lieu of aggregate buying new aggregate at times. We feel like that the RAP stays in place better than some of the aggregate mixes that we use. So that's one of the big reasons why we're doing that. The industry's experienced a RAP deficit at many of our plants, and could save the state money by incorporating that material back into our mix. Similar to the industry, we are wanting to save money in any way possible. So I think that doesn't always equate to equaling each other's interests. The federal government is pushing environmental restrictions and carbon reduction programs. In times, these requirements may be placed on federally funded projects. Are there any plans to reduce the amount of RAP captured by the district so the industry can meet these upcoming requirements?
You'll need to advance the slide.
Oh, sorry. The DOH, as far as I know, we do not capture RAP for federally aided projects. There's probably an exception out there. That's why I'm saying, as far as I know. The PO contract allows districts to make the decision on whether or not to capture the millings. And our hope is that they're running the numbers and seeing what makes the most sense economically for their situation. What is the status of the paving guidelines for state force paving? How do state force paving guidelines differ from the specifications the industry has to abide by? There are no asphalt paving specifications for state forces specifically. State forces should be following the same guidelines as vendors as we try to utilize existing specifications as much as possible. Districts are monitoring compaction by use of roller pass testing, and our goal is to produce similar quality work as the industry. What can industry do to help the department have a successful 2023 program, and what can we do long-term to help prepare for next year's program? And so somehow this has gotten in on mine, I would imagine, because Eric works for me. So this is input from all of us, not just operations on this. And what we're saying is continue working with us. Understand that we have deadlines out of our control, and a lot of those deadlines are centered around the fact that our fiscal year comes to the end right as we get really started in a construction season and paving season. And so I've heard the secretary say, unlike a lot of industry, you all are trying to make a profit. We try to bankrupt our spending authority. And remember, it's only spending authority. It's not like we have checking accounts for individual projects. We just have spending authority awarded to us by the legislature, but we're trying to bankrupt that every year right at July 1st. And the bills that don't come in on time come out of next year's spending authority and what we have for that program. And so it's a tight line to walk right there. I'm telling you, it's tough to hit that just on the nail. If industry is unable to perform work, let us know as soon as possible. We just want, we know we have to get the job done in a certain time. We just want to know what we have to do that. So let us know. Communication, remain engaged and provide feedback on design standards and specifications. And that was all about those open meetings that were mentioned in the presentation before me. Better compliance with and paying closer attention to civil rights, labor requirements on federally funded bid projects, specifically erecting and maintaining bulletin boards, labor boards, weekly payroll submissions, timely prompt payment submittals, inclusion of mandatory documents into subcontract agreements. And so that goes back to the presentation before that you've already saw today too. Good. Can industry work on any specific types of training for your new inspectors or other resurfacing related personnel? We are always seeking and trying to offer the best training possible for our folks. Assist with implementation of recommendations that originate from the FHWA PAR review on asphalt and pavement construction. You know, we feel like we are working with you all and want to continue that relationship and make it as strong as we can. So we will, I think you all get involved at times in some of our training. We know that we don't always have the specialist or the most up-to-date knowledge. And so when we know that you all do, we will seek it and we'll be grateful for your help in doing that. Okay. Does the DOH still have a positive view on rubbleization? And does the DOH expect its usage to increase? So rubbleization has its place. I think we've had some successful jobs that we've used it. There have been jobs that maybe weren't as successful as we'd hoped. It is not a magic fix button, but it is a tool to use in those appropriate circumstances. I look at it from a pavement management aspect, because that's what I ask Eric to do. And we set in our pavement management that the treatment is reconstruction. And so the districts have that opportunity to decide what actual reconstruction method do they want to use on that project. So I guess I'm saying is I'm not as a pavement management person saying it's got to be rubbleization. It's just got to be reconstruction at times. And that's typically determined by the district design engineer. And I think that concludes my part of this. Is there any questions related to what I've talked about or operations that you all would like to bring forward right now? If you ever have any, while you're thinking, if you ever have any questions about the purchase order contracts themselves, you're more than welcome to call me, but I'll probably send you to Carissa Nichols. She is my contracts manager. So she's the one that is overseeing putting those together and getting them through the bid process. So feel free to reach out to her too. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jake. I appreciate it. Jake, you can take a break. You deserve it. Okay, I'll try to get this turned on. We're running just a little over on time, but Jake was really clear on answering the questions. I think that's more important. So thank you, and we'll have Sean answer his questions next.
Is that good? No? All right, I'll try to go through this really quick. So how's the pre-qual process going? So far it's working as intended. We're still gathering data, and for implementing the letter grades, as I mentioned in my presentation, are we getting what we desire out of it? That's also to be determined. So until we get it fully implemented, we'll have better answers to you, so stay tuned. Do we need to submit on a project basis for special revision items? 403 comes to mind. 403 is now our spec book, so that's no longer a special revision item that you need to request to perform. Special revision items, you need to request perform those prior to the work. So before you want to perform that work, submit special revision items requests. Pre-qual group. We try to review changes to the spec book every year and update our checklists for projects that go out that may have those old special revisions in them. So if a spec is removed or a special revision is updated into the spec, we try to make those adjustments accordingly. No, we're not. We don't plan to alter the process moving forward at this time.
It won't be the first time I stuck.
As I mentioned, grading levels are intended to be implemented next year, January 1st. Depending on we have enough data to do that. There's still, I guess, an opportunity to be up to management to determine if we want to kick that can down the road one more year to get the full 3-year cycle. In-house procedure, how's it working? Appears to be working as intended. We had very few instances where we didn't even contemplated bid rejection. And there's been a notable reduction in the amount of focus bids. And there's not currently any plans to alter that going forward. Our industry's fair, we're getting set up with software for e-ticketing. Some industries are faring better than others. Fully anticipate there's going to be a rush as this construction season starts and people start to realize that we're not going to be accepting material. So I'm hoping that you all are been in contact with your suppliers, and when you're bidding jobs, that they're aware of this, they'll be reminded of it at the pre-cons, that type of thing. In areas where we're not going to have service, that's kind of the reason why we're still going to require paper tickets. Our inspectors will be able to enter, I guess, information based off the ticket number that they get from the truck. Once they get into the service area, those tickets are able to be synced up. And yes, we are going to require paper tickets this year. So why does change orders take several months to be approved? Well, there could be varying reasons why something may take a while to process, but some of the reasons: complexity, completeness, need to find the funding source. From inception to create or to final approval, our change orders take an average of 5 weeks. So it's 3 weeks to generate it, determine the funding source, review, revise it, and then 2 weeks for the contractor surety approval and for final management approval. So on average, that's what it takes. Some can be processed faster than others. Others may take a little bit longer than 5 weeks. If you have a concern about a specific change order, please inquire with your further regional on the status of it. Project finalization, average length to finalize a project about 150. It's staying about that at that time frame. I think the last time I looked at it was around 164 days. However, the number of projects that are out there that have been closed, it has stayed constant at 120 days. Our goal is to remain under that 180-day threshold. We think we may be able to improve on that, that date timeframe to final contract. So, Ashtoware, give an update on Boot AWP, went live on all contracts late this year. There were a few select contracts from last year or from 2021 that we brought in. The intent is great contractors access with crew change orders, final estimates. As Ron touched on, industry will be doing a pilot project, entering their own samples. We'll see how that goes, and I'm sure MCST will be conducting training on how that process will work. Inspection. So it seems to be a large increase in consultant inspectors. Do we see that continuing? That's difficult to forecast. We don't necessarily anticipate needing or an increase in the future than what we're utilizing now, but we also don't necessarily see a decrease in the amount that we're currently using. We, of course, prefer to use our own staff, but the current workload doesn't make that possible. Why does the district's flood their projects and bowl inspectors solves other districts? Seems like they don't have enough inspectors. So, the district, they're responsible for their own projects in their respective districts. There is a process of them requesting help from other districts, and they're supposed to be doing that before they request to use the consultants. But of course, the workload is just too much for that even to be a possibility anymore. So, if it's not available from other districts, and it really hasn't been lately, then consultant inspection could be used for that purpose. So, invoices, payments to the contractor, seem to be some issues with the invoices and to the auditor's office. That's true. There were instances where the state auditor's office were rejecting payments due to the format in which it was being submitted. We think those issues have since been resolved, and they appear to be satisfied with the format and our processes currently in place. So hopefully that's taken care of, and that's not going to be an issue. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Sean. Again, that was a lot of questions. I appreciate everybody taking their time to answer them.
Okay, civil rights. Can we ask the state to revisit how they determine DBE goals for projects? The industry has had numerous projects with a 5-6% goal, can easily get 15%. Some jobs are 12 to 14. Not currently analyzing projects when properly setting these goals. So our overall DBE goal was set every 3 years. The next goal setting period for us is going to take place in late 2024. The goals are established per project, and they're based on the items of work provided in the estimates and the number of ready, willing, and able DBEs that can perform that work. Over the last several years, there's been occasions where our overall DBE utilization fell short of our annual goal. So with that, we had to submit a corrective action plan to FHWA. In that corrective action plan, we agreed that we would increase our DBE goals where possible to address that shortfall. So the goals have been adjusted to reflect DBE utilization expectations and to accurately reflect the DBE attainment. There have been very high DBE goals, 14% on some paving projects. We struggle to meet some of these goals. How can we work to reduce the goals? So DBE goals reflect the feasibility of attainment in conjunction with the reasons I stated earlier. For many projects, DBEs can theoretically perform anywhere from 18 to 32% of the work items. However, the goals are narrowly tailored to ensure that the DBEs can perform and that we are not unduly burdening non-DBE firms who might be able to perform this work. The current DBE utilization plan is approved until FHWA evaluates the results of our 2024 goal setting process. And as usual, when that goal setting process begins, the industry will be invited to participate in that. How many DBE firms are certified in West Virginia and how many are actively working? Some DBE state that they are at a limit of work they can accept. Well, as of now, there's 254 active DBEs certified in West Virginia. 125 are on the construction side and 129 are on the consultant side. The exact number of DBEs working at a particular time wasn't available when we put this together. And our office has not been notified by any DBE that they're maxed out or that they can't do any more work. You know, if you feel that you can't meet a DBE goal, the DBE special provision does outline the steps that you need to take to let us know that.
All right. Good to be back again here. All right. CS&T. There have been numerous projects done with the DOH approval that exceeded the maximum thresholds for RAP usages with great success. Is there any plans for the DOH to alter their specifications to allow higher RAP contents while not requiring binder grade manipulation? First, I thought I was with Jake answering all those RAP questions. I thought I would get out of some of these, but I guess not. We are planning on moving towards balanced mix design, which will allow more flexibility in using RAP. We are scheduled to discuss changes to the MP that governs RAP used at the Asphalt Subcommittee meeting, which was held yesterday, and in conjunction with this conference. Did that answer your question? Yes, they will. Lord. All right, next year, John, limit the words on these. Bond strength is still an issue facing industry. Industry members have tried multiple methods and materials to achieve the level of bond required by the specification, but in some cases still come up short. Are we certain that the specification is achievable in all situations and is applicable to West Virginia? First off, there's exceptions to every rule. I think everybody in here knows that. Is the spec perfect in all situations? Name one spec that is. All right. We right now are not comfortable with changing our bond strength specifications. You know, there's no reason, there's no way I can stand up here and say that bond strength is not important. All right. I'm not about to try. Do we have some issues? Yes, I think we do. How to address those, I'm not so sure. I talked with John about some ideas. Buzz Powell was here last year, did a good presentation on what to use, how bond strength could be used, but I don't know if we really got that data that we're comfortable with in moving that direction. But it is something that I think is worth looking into. So yeah, I think it's a good idea that there will be some sort of changes made. Any other questions about bond strength? All right. Balanced mix design. How can industry get involved and help the DOH with their balanced mix design plans? Join the Asphalt Subcommittee or the BMD Task Force. Contact Sean Jack. Sean, stand up. Anti-skid testing. Can the West Virginia DOH clarify the requirements for aggregate testing of anti-skid properties and stockpiles for asphalt production? Also, would the West Virginia DOH consider allowing the districts or qualified third-party consultant the ability to perform and certify this type of aggregate, since there is a lengthy backlog through the West Virginia DOH? All limestone and dolomite limestone skid aggregates are tested and approved by the division on a stockpile by stockpile basis. They must meet the requirements of section 703.1.5.1. for limestone and section 703.1.5.2 for dolomite limestone. The districts are not equipped to perform this testing. Third-party testing is not currently being considered. The soundness test alone takes approximately 1 week to run. Producers should plan accordingly and should contact their district materials lab to submit material for testing well in advance of their anticipated use. That is one thing that we do hear complaints about at materials, that it takes so long to approve some of these plants, quarries, whatever. Remember, some of this stuff, you know, we've only got so much testing space, okay? And it takes a while for some of these tests to run. So there can be a backlog, especially when, as the answer alludes to, that, you know, you want this approved yesterday. But I will stick by my stance on your failure to plan ahead does not constitute a failure on my part. So I think my guys do the best they can with this. If it becomes an issue, I'm sure we could figure out a way to consult it out. But right now, I think we're doing a pretty decent job of keeping up with it. Density nuclear gauges. Does the DOH have any plans to move towards non-nuclear testing options? What about the rolling density meter? Yes, we have plans to move away from nuclear density gauges. However, there's still, the data there is just not consistent with us getting repeatability on our results that we like to see. And yes, we would benefit from moving away from the nuclear gauges. You should see all the paperwork these things cause. However, we have tried out some non-nuclear testing options in the past and feel the technology is not quite there. Industry is more than welcome to use non-nuclear testing options for their own QC. Skid materials. Moving forward with what was learned at the NCAT test track, is there any plans to alter the requirements for skid source approval? The results of the NCAT test track confirm that we have set good requirements. If industry has some ideas for local aggregates that are skid resistant, you may want to consider sponsoring a section on the NCAT test track. Basically, our NCAT test that we did, it confirmed that our numbers are where they probably should be. Relating to the federal push on carbon reduction, hauling transportation of stone from other states 400 miles away sometimes to meet the skid requirements will undeniably affect the outcome of any carbon analysis. We need to find ways to utilize more local aggregates while still retaining the required protection for our travelers. Safety is a higher priority than carbon reduction. Would anybody disagree with that? Okay. If industry has some ideas for local aggregates that are skid resistant, again, you can consider doing an NCAT test track study. PWL. There are jobs coming out that require the use of VRAM on the center line joint. How will this affect the joint density pavement structure on the project? Where we are specifying this product, we will not be doing joint density testing. I think it's pretty simple. Technical support. Steve?
All right, good morning. First off, I'd like to thank Janie for doing the spec and publication update. I think she did a great job. And when you do that, you guys can hear me okay, right? Okay. It's hard to make the spec update interesting. I think she did a good job on that front. So thanks again. All right, and I think I'm the last person to the DOH. I know everybody's like tired of sitting in your seats, so the break is forthcoming. Is it possible to add additional bid items to proposals for work that needs to be done instead of making it incidental to asphalt? A couple examples are eelants and manholes. So on the DOH side, we've always encouraged people, if we have a bid item for work, you should be included in the project. So as far as thinking of what's the solution to this, people, if you're inspecting projects And I don't know if it's a particular district, or if we got new employees, but feedback back on our side would be helpful. Potentially, maybe somebody doesn't know, but the only way we're gonna solve the problem is to let people know about it. So again, this is something we preach, but maybe on your side of things, if you're seeing it a regular occurrence, try to help us out to get word out. Could slow flaggers be added back to the interstate jobs? They are needed when doing ramps and getting trucks into projects, especially performing concrete joint repairs and patches, as sometimes they're very close together and do not allow much room for trucks to get into the closure. So I'll just read the answer and I'll elaborate. Over the last several years, we have removed flagger hours on interstate resurfacing projects. A need for such item will now have to be justified, noted in the plans and supplemented with special provision. We made this decision to remove the safety hazard of having flaggers facing a high volume of traffic traveling at a high rate of speed. We feel that this is the appropriate change due to the increased safety of the other traffic control measures of items such as use of traffic director, addition of advanced warning signs beyond what's called for in the TTCM, lights on these signs, and other traffic control devices. That is included for safety will be the speed monitoring trailers, changeable message signs, shadow vehicles, and warp zone speed limits. Two different things. We're looking, it doesn't really say anything about expressways or interstates in spec on the flaggers, so we're looking at potentially clarifying that in specs, just so that everyone would know that that requirement is there, unless there's certain exceptions. Secondly, as far as flaggers go, you guys can use them to your own benefit as needed on the project. So if that may be something that you need to consider on your side. PWL. Why were the bonuses struck from PWL and smoothness specifications? Will we ever see a return to incentive-driven specifications again? So, it says right here, removal of bonus structure was identified as an organizational goal. Just like industry, we as an organization have leadership that inspire us and motivate us, and give us instructions. So, second part, are there any further plans to manipulate the specification moving forward? At this time, no. I'll hand it back over to Eric. Appreciate your all's minute or two.
So thank you to all our speakers. Thank you for taking your time to put your presentations and your speeches together and providing us the information. We do need the updates. A lot of that stuff's important to us. It might not seem important to you, but really it is just as important as laying down the asphalt itself. Appreciate everybody's time and all their information. I'd also like to thank Alex Kaua. He works with me. He's been a big help. Thank you, Alex. I'm gonna wrap up at the district and recall meetings. I did always conclude the meeting with asking the contractor and the RDOH employees to be safe, and take a moment and remind your employees to be safe too. We all know there are people out there, they're driving, not paying attention, drivers on their cell phones, they're speeding through work zones. So I want to take a minute, ask you to be safe, and we want to make sure that us and all of our employees go home safe at the end of the day. With that being said, thank everybody for all their hard work and dedication. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. We don't always get to see that, but thank you all for doing that. John, I know we ran over a little bit on time, but you gave us a lot of questions, and I think we clearly answered your questions. But if not, find us. So thank you, and I'm going to turn this back over to John. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you all the DOH guys that did all this. We went over a little bit. That's fine. We got some good information. We are gonna cut the break a little short though, so I have, 10:10, I think, on my phone. We wanna be back in our seats at 10:20. We'll start up again. And we'll get rolling on the main program, if that's fine. Thank you guys for hanging in there.